My name is Brandon Mitchell. For 2 years, my marriage was everything I could have hoped for, peaceful, happy, and full of trust. Then one day, it all collapsed without warning. My wife's sister created fake evidence claiming I was seeing someone else. She fabricated messages, photos, and even fake accounts to make it look completely real. My wife believed her sister immediately. She didn't ask me a single question, didn't give me any chance to explain, and didn't want to hear a word from me. Within days, she filed for divorce. Her entire family stood behind her sister and turned against me completely. I was blindsided. The woman I loved and the family I thought was mine suddenly saw me as the villain. The accusations spread fast, and the humiliation hit harder than anything I had ever experienced. That single betrayal destroyed everything I believed about my marriage and my life in just a matter of weeks. I never imagined that one person's jealousy could tear apart a home so quickly and so thoroughly, but it did. And what happened next would change the course of my life forever. If you've ever been falsely accused by someone close to you or had your own family turn against you without giving you a chance to speak, then stay with me. This story gets much darker before it gets better. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happened next. Life moved along normally in our quiet neighborhood in Madison until one ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Rachel had been acting distant for a few days, checking her phone more often than usual and avoiding eye contact during dinner. I asked if something was bothering her at work, but she brushed it off and said everything was fine. That evening, she barely touched her food and went to bed early. The next morning, she left for work without saying goodbye, which was unusual for her. When I got home from the office later that day, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. She looked up at me with cold eyes and slid the documents across the table. They were divorce papers. She told me her sister had shown her undeniable proof that I was seeing someone else. I tried to speak, but she raised her hand and said she didn't want to hear any excuses. She had already made up her mind. The proof Megan provided included text messages from a number I didn't recognize, screenshots of conversations that sounded exactly like me, and several photos that appeared to show me with another woman in compromising situations. Rachel said Megan had spent hours gathering everything because she cared about her little sister and couldn't stand to see her being lied to. I insisted none of it was real and begged for 5 minutes to explain, but Rachel stood up and told me the evidence spoke for itself. She had already spoken with her parents, and they agreed the marriage was over. Within 48 hours, she had moved some of her things to her parents' house and blocked my number. Tyler called me that same night after hearing what happened. He listened quietly while I tried to make sense of the situation. Olivia reached out the following morning offering to come over if I needed someone to talk to. Both of them knew me well enough to understand I would never do what I was being accused of. Still, the damage was done. Rachel filed the official paperwork the next week, citing irreconcilable differences and claiming emotional distress caused by my alleged actions. Her attorney sent me a letter demanding I vacate the shared apartment within 30 days. During the following weeks, Megan became more active in the situation. She posted subtle comments on social media about protecting family and not tolerating betrayal. Rachel shared some of those posts and added her own thoughts about learning to trust the right people. I tried calling Rachel one more time from a different number, hoping for even a short conversation, but she answered only to tell me the decision was final and that her family fully supported her. Diane and Richard Thompson made it clear through messages that they stood behind their older daughter and saw no reason to question the evidence she had presented. The speed of everything left me stunned. One week I was planning weekend trips with my wife, and the next I was packing boxes while watching the life we had built disappear. Tyler stopped by to help carry heavy furniture to storage, and Olivia brought food so I wouldn't have to cook alone. Their presence was the only steady thing during those chaotic days. Rachel never wavered in her belief, and her family continued to treat me as the guilty party without ever asking for my side of the story. By the end of the month, the apartment was empty of Rachel's belongings. The divorce process moved forward quickly through the courts in Madison. I signed whatever documents were required, still in disbelief at how fast trust could evaporate when one person decided not to listen. The woman I had loved for 2 years was now completely convinced I had betrayed her, all because her sister had created a convincing lie. The silence after Rachel moved out felt heavier than I expected. I returned to an empty apartment each evening, the rooms still carrying faint traces of the life we had shared just weeks earlier. Messages from mutual friends started coming, and some confused others already taking sides based on what they had heard. Tyler called almost every day to check on me, while Olivia sent short texts offering to bring groceries or just sit with me if I didn't want to be alone. Their support was steady, but it couldn't fill the sudden void left by Rachel and her family. The real storm began when Diane and Richard Thompson decided to get involved more openly. One afternoon, I received a long group text from Diane addressed to several family members and a few close friends. She wrote that her daughter had been deeply hurt by my actions and that it was important for everyone to know the truth about what kind of person I really was. Richard followed up with his own message stating that he had always had doubts about me and that Megan's evidence had only confirmed what he suspected all along. They both painted me as someone who had taken advantage of Rachel's kindness and used the marriage for personal convenience. Megan joined the conversation shortly after posting screenshots of the fake messages and photos in a private family chat. She added comments about how she had tried to warn Rachel before the wedding but didn't want to cause problems at the time. She described me as a master manipulator who had hidden his true character until it was too late. Rachel reposted some of those messages on her own social media with the caption, "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most." Within hours, comments from her extended family and friends started pouring in, calling me names like pathetic, worthless, and the kind of man who bails when things get real. Several people I had known through Rachel's family for 2 years now referred to me as that guy who betrayed Rachel without ever asking for my version of events. The humiliation spread quickly. I started receiving messages from people I barely knew, some expressing disappointment, others outright insulting me. At work, a few colleagues who were friendly with Rachel's circle began treating me differently, avoiding eye contact in meetings or changing the subject when I entered the room. The pressure built day after day. Every time I tried to reach out to Rachel to ask for a face-to-face conversation, her responses were short and final. She had seen the proof, trusted her sister completely, and saw no reason to revisit the matter. Diane reinforced this position in another group message, writing that Rachel deserved better than someone who would lie so convincingly, and that the family was united in supporting her decision to move on. Tyler came over one evening after I told him about the latest wave of messages. He sat with me at the kitchen table and listened while I explained how surreal it felt to be condemned by people who had once welcomed me into their home. Olivia joined us later that night, bringing takeout and reminding me that not everyone believed the story. Both of them encouraged me to document everything, the messages, the posts, the timeline, in case I needed it later. Their calm presence helped me hold it together when the weight of the accusations felt overwhelming. The following weekend, Diane organized a small family gathering at their house. Rachel attended, and according to what I later heard from a mutual acquaintance, the conversation centered heavily on how lucky she was to have discovered my true colors before things went any further. Megan played the role of protective older sister, receiving praise for stepping up when no one else would. Richard reportedly told the group that he had never fully trusted me and that this situation proved his instincts were right. The narrative they built was consistent and powerful. I was the villain, Megan was the hero, and Rachel was the innocent victim who had escaped a bad marriage just in time. I spent that weekend mostly alone, staring at the divorce papers that now sat on my desk. The speed with which an entire family had turned against me left me numb. No one had asked for my side. No one had wanted to see any counter evidence. The accusations had become truth simply because Megan said so, and Rachel believed her without question. The sense of powerlessness was crushing. By the end of the month, the messages and public comments had slowed, but the damage was permanent. My reputation within Rachel's social circle was destroyed. Friends I thought were mutual now kept their distance. The apartment felt colder every night. Tyler and Olivia continued checking in regularly, but even their support couldn't erase the constant replay of Diane's words, Richard's judgment, and Megan's carefully crafted lies in my mind. The betrayal wasn't just from one person anymore. It had become a united front from the entire Thompson family, and I was left standing alone on the outside. The weeks after Rachel officially filed for divorce became a blur of emptiness and exhaustion. I stopped sleeping through the night. The thought scared me enough that I called my parents late that night. My mother, Linda, answered on the second ring. Her voice changed the moment she heard how broken I sounded. She told me to stay exactly where I was and that they were coming right away. My father, Edward, and mother arrived within the hour. They didn't ask for explanations at first. They simply sat with me, made tea, and let me talk when I was ready. The next morning, they insisted I pack a small bag and come stay with them for a while. I didn't have the energy to argue. That same day, Tyler and Olivia showed up at my parents' house after my mom called them. Tyler brought a duffel bag with some of my clothes from the apartment, and Olivia carried a notebook where she had already started listing local therapists and support programs. The four of us, my parents, Tyler, and Olivia, sat down together that evening and made a plan. My mother found a highly recommended psychiatrist in Madison who specialized in trauma and depression. My father handled the insurance paperwork and drove me to the first appointment. Tyler took time off work to accompany me to several sessions during the first month, sitting in the waiting room so I wouldn't feel alone. Olivia researched different treatment options and helped me build a daily routine that included short walks by the lake and simple meals so I wouldn't neglect basic self-care. The diagnosis was severe clinical depression with suicidal ideation. The psychiatrist recommended intensive outpatient therapy combined with medication and regular check-ins. For the next several months, my days revolved around therapy sessions, group counseling, and quiet time at my parents' house. There were days when getting out of bed felt impossible. On those mornings, either Tyler or Olivia would show up, sometimes both, and gently encourage me to take one small step at a time. They never pushed too hard, but they never let me disappear completely either. My parents' support was constant and quiet. My mother cooked meals I used to love as a child, not to fix me, but to remind me I was still cared for. My father sat with me on the back porch many evenings, saying very little, just keeping me company while we watched the sunset over the neighborhood. They never once doubted my innocence. Their belief in me became one of the few anchors I had during that dark period. Tyler and Olivia became my daily lifeline outside of family. Tyler helped me update my resume when I felt ready to think about work again. He also drove me to appointments when the medication made me too drowsy to drive safely. Olivia focused more on the emotional side. She listened for hours when I needed a vent about the unfairness of everything, and she celebrated even the smallest improvements, like sleeping through the night or eating a full meal. The three of us developed a quiet rhythm. Some evenings we would sit together in my parents' living room watching movies, not talking much, just being present. The treatment stretched across 4 long years. There were setbacks weeks when the depression pulled me back down and the old thoughts returned. But slowly, with consistent therapy, medication adjustments, and the unwavering support from my parents, Tyler and Olivia, I began to rebuild. I started exercising regularly, first short walks, then longer runs along the lakeshore paths in Madison. I read books about business and technology during recovery periods. Little by little, I regained the ability to focus and dream again. By the end of the 4th year, I was no longer the same person who had sat on the floor contemplating ending it all. The depression hadn't disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled my every waking moment. I had learned coping strategies, rebuilt my confidence in small steps, and started to believe that my life could still have meaning beyond the betrayal. Tyler and Olivia had been there through every stage of that journey. Their friendship never wavered, even on the hardest days. As I grew stronger, our bond deepened in ways none of us had expected at the beginning, but at that point I was simply grateful to have made it through the darkest chapter of my life with them by my side. Recovery didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. By the beginning of the 5th year, after the divorce, I had started to feel like myself again. The heavy fog that had clouded my mind for so long began to lift. I still attended therapy sessions regularly, but they had shifted from crisis management to long-term planning. My parents continued offering quiet support from their home in Madison, never pressuring me, but always making sure I knew I had a safe place. Tyler and Olivia remained constants in my daily life, checking in often and celebrating even the smallest victories with me. I decided it was time to channel the energy I had regained into something productive. I had always been interested in technology, particularly software solutions for small businesses. During my recovery period, I'd spent many quiet afternoons reading about startup trends and learning new coding languages online. With encouragement from Tyler, who worked in IT project management, I began developing a simple inventory management app tailored for local retail stores. Olivia helped me test early versions and gave honest feedback about user experience. What started as a side project slowly turned into a real business idea. I registered my company under the name Mitchell Tech Solutions in downtown Madison. The city's growing tech scene and proximity to the university provided a good environment for networking. I attended local startup events, joined entrepreneur meetups, and gradually built connections with other founders and investors. Tyler introduced me to several contacts in his professional circle, while Olivia helped design the initial branding and marketing materials. Their combined support made the early stages much less intimidating than they would have been alone. The first year of the business was challenging but rewarding. I secured a small office space near the Capitol building and hired 2 part-time developers. The app gained traction faster than expected when a few local stores started using it and shared positive reviews. Word spread through the business community in Madison, and within 18 months we had expanded to neighboring cities in Wisconsin and Minnesota. I focused on continuous improvement, listening to customer feedback and adding new features that solved real problems for small business owners. As the company grew, so did my public profile. Local business publications began featuring my story, not the painful divorce part, but the comeback narrative of a self taught entrepreneur who built something useful from the ground up. I was invited to speak at several startup conferences and technology panels in the region. The recognition felt surreal after the years I'd spent barely able to get out of bed. Tyler often attended these events with me, offering quiet encouragement backstage, while Olivia helped prepare my talking points and made sure I didn't overwork myself. Success brought new responsibilities. I hired more staff, moved to a larger office space downtown, and started mentoring young developers through a local university program. The financial stability allowed me to support my parents more comfortably and give back to the mental health organizations that had helped me during my lowest points. Olivia continued working as a graphic designer, but increasingly collaborated with my team on branding projects for the company. Our friendship had deepened naturally over the years of shared struggles and small victories. What began as support during my recovery slowly evolved into something more meaningful, though neither of us rushed to define it. Tyler remained my closest confidant throughout this period. He became the head of operations at my company and played a crucial role in scaling the business efficiently. The three of us, Tyler, Olivia, and I, developed a strong working and personal rhythm. We often spent weekends hiking along the lakeshore trails or attending community events in Madison, enjoying the simple stability that had been missing for so long. By the end of the fourth year of building the business, Mitchell Tech Solutions had become a recognized name in the Midwest tech community. Revenue had grown steadily, and we were preparing for a potential expansion round. I had gone from someone who once contemplated ending his life to a respected entrepreneur with a growing team and a stable future. The contrast was striking, but I never forgot how I had gotten there. The support system that carried me through the darkest years, my parents Edward and Linda Tyler and Olivia, remained the foundation of my new life. Their presence had been constant when the rest of the world turned away. As I looked toward the future, I felt genuine gratitude for the chosen family that had stood by me when blood relations had not. The journey from rock bottom to building something meaningful had taken time, patience, and the right people. And for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to believe that better chapters were still ahead. The years of building the company had brought stability I never thought I would have again. Mitchell Tech Solutions continued to expand in Madison. We moved into a larger office near the university campus, hired more developers, and signed contracts with several regional retail chains. Local business publications started featuring the company's growth, and I received invitations to speak at startup events across Wisconsin. Tyler managed operations with quiet efficiency, while Olivia took charge of client relations and branding. My parents, Edward and Linda, watched the progress with pride, often joining us for simple family dinners on weekends. One crisp autumn morning, an unexpected email appeared in my inbox. It was from Thompson. The subject line read, "Important Family Matter." She wrote that the family had recently uncovered serious information and hoped we could meet in person. I read the message several times before forwarding it to Tyler and Olivia. Both agreed I should hear them out, but with caution. We arranged a meeting at a quiet cafe downtown the following week. Diane arrived first, looking older than I remembered. Richard followed, then Megan. Rachel was not there. The conversation began tensely. Diane explained they had gone through old computer files and discovered that Megan had fabricated all the evidence against me. She admitted Megan had created fake text messages, edited photographs, and set up false accounts to make the accusations appear real. Richard added that they had confronted Megan and she had finally confessed. Megan sat silently at first, then spoke in a subdued voice. She said she had been struggling after her own divorce and felt jealous seeing her younger sister in a stable marriage. She claimed her actions spiraled beyond what she intended. I listened without interrupting. The explanation felt empty after everything I had endured. Diane then looked at me and said the family deeply regretted how they had treated me. She suggested we could try to rebuild some form of relationship for everyone's sake. Richard nodded and mentioned that Rachel had been having difficulties since the divorce and might benefit from closure. Megan added quietly that she was truly sorry and hoped I could find forgiveness in my heart. Their sudden change felt calculated. I asked directly why they were reaching out now, years later, after publicly humiliating me and cutting me off completely. Diane hesitated before admitting they had seen articles about my company's success and growing reputation. The motive became clear. They weren't here for genuine remorse. They were here because of my current financial stability and social standing. Tyler, who had come with me, remained silent, but his expression showed he understood the situation perfectly. After the meeting ended, we sat in the car and discussed what had just happened. The apology carried an obvious self-interest. The Thompson family had abandoned me when I was broken. Now that I had rebuilt my life successfully, they suddenly wanted to reconnect. In the following weeks, the contact continued. Diane sent longer emails talking about family bonds and second chances. Richard called once praising my achievements and saying they hoped to be part of my life again. Megan reached out separately, mentioning she had been in therapy and wanted to make amends. Even Rachel sent a short message asking if we could talk privately. Each communication carried the same underlying expectation that my success now obligated me to forgive and include them. I discussed everything with my parents, Tyler and Olivia. My mother, Linda, was especially direct. She reminded me how they had stood by me during the darkest years, while the Thompson family chose to believe lies without question. My father, Edward, simply said that real family doesn't turn their back when you need them most. Tyler and Olivia both supported my decision, emphasizing they did not trust the sudden change of heart. The more I reflected, the clearer it became. Their interest was not in healing old wounds. It was in gaining access to the resources and stability I had worked so hard to create after they helped destroy my previous life. The pattern was familiar. When I had nothing, I was disposable. Now that I had something valuable, they wanted back in. I made my choice quietly. There would be no further meetings, no reconciliations, and no second chances. The chapter with the Thompson family was permanently closed. The people who had truly supported me, my parents Edward and Linda Tyler and Olivia, were the only family I needed. The discovery of the truth had come too late. Some betrayals cut too deep to be forgiven, especially when the apology arrives only after success returns. The realization that their apology was motivated by my success changed everything. After the cafe meeting with Diane, Richard, and Megan, I stopped responding to their messages. Diane continued sending emails about family healing and second chances. Richard called twice more, leaving voicemails praising my business achievements. Megan sent a longer message admitting her mistakes and asking for forgiveness. Even Rachel reached out again, saying she wanted to meet privately to talk about the past. I read every message carefully but never replied. The pattern was too obvious. They had rejected me when I was broken, and now they wanted back in because I had become successful. I consulted with Mr. Whitaker, my attorney in Madison. He reviewed the situation and confirmed that we had strong grounds for a civil lawsuit. The fabricated evidence, public defamation, and emotional distress caused during and after the divorce could be addressed under Wisconsin law. We decided to move forward with a formal complaint for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and related claims against Megan Thompson and potentially other family members who had actively participated in spreading the false accusations. The lawsuit was filed quietly at first. When the Thompson family received the legal papers, their tone changed dramatically. Diane called me directly, her voice shaking as she asked why I was taking things to court. Richard left a message saying they were willing to settle privately to avoid public embarrassment. Megan sent a panicked email offering to retract everything publicly if I dropped the case. I forwarded all communications to Mr. Whitaker without responding personally. The court process in Madison moved forward over several months. During discovery, the evidence against Megan became overwhelming. Digital forensics experts confirmed she had created fake accounts, edited photographs, and manufactured text conversations. Bank records and phone logs showed coordinated efforts within the family to isolate me after the accusations. Tyler and Olivia provided statements as witnesses to my mental health decline. My parents, Edward and Linda, also testified about the severity of my condition during those early years. The trial itself was emotionally draining but necessary. Megan took the stand and attempted to minimize her actions, claiming it was a moment of poor judgment during a difficult time in her life. Diane and Richard testified that they had simply trusted their older daughter. The judge listened carefully to all sides. Mr. Whitaker presented a clear timeline showing how the false accusations had led to the rapid divorce, public humiliation, and my subsequent severe depression requiring years of treatment. In the end, the court ruled strongly in my favor. Megan was found liable for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The Thompson family as a group was held partially responsible for amplifying the false narrative. The judgment awarded me a substantial sum, $350,000, covering damages, legal fees, and punitive measures. The court also ordered Megan to issue a public retraction and apology, though I knew it would mean little at this point. The financial consequences for the Thompson family were significant. They had to sell property and dip into retirement savings to cover the judgment. Their reputation in their social circle suffered as word of the lawsuit and its outcome spread. Rachel reportedly struggled with the fallout, facing questions from friends about why she had believed the accusations so quickly. Megan's standing as the golden child was permanently damaged within the family. I received the final court documents on a cold winter morning in Madison. Tyler and Olivia were with me when I opened the envelope. There was no celebration, only a quiet sense of closure. The money itself meant less to me than the official recognition that what had happened to me was wrong. After the judgment, the Thompson family made one final attempt at contact. Diane sent a letter saying they accepted responsibility and hoped we could find some way to move forward as a family. Richard called Mr. Whitaker asking if any settlement discussions remained possible. I instructed my attorney to send a single response making my position crystal clear there would be no further communication, no reconciliation, and no relationship of any kind moving forward. The chapter was closed permanently. My parents, Edward and Linda, supported the decision fully. Tyler remained a steady presence at the company, and Olivia continued to be by my side, both personally and professionally. The people who had stood with me through the worst years were still there, now that justice had been served. The lawsuit hadn't been about revenge. It had been about accountability and protecting the life I had fought so hard to rebuild. The court judgment brought a finality I had waited years to feel. After the papers were signed and the money transferred, the Thompson family stopped reaching out completely. No more emails from Diane, no more calls from Richard, no more messages from Megan or Rachel. The silence was loud. I heard through distant mutual acquaintances that the family had faced real financial strain after paying the judgment. They had to sell their vacation property and make significant changes to their lifestyle. Megan's reputation within their circle had suffered badly, and Rachel reportedly moved to a smaller place on the other side of Madison. I chose not to follow up on any of it. Their difficulties were no longer my concern. The people who had abandoned me when I was at my lowest no longer had any place in my life. I blocked their numbers and emails, making the separation complete and permanent. There would be no coffee meetings, no awkward holiday invitations, and no second chances. The bridge had been burned the day they chose to believe lies without giving me the chance to speak. Life in Madison settled into a new, quieter rhythm. My parents, Edward and Linda, remained a steady presence. We had Sunday dinners together regularly, simple meals where conversation flowed easily without underlying tension. They never pushed me to reconcile with the Thompson family. Instead, they focused on the present and the future we were building together. Tyler continued as head of operations at the company. His steady leadership helped us expand further into the Midwest market. We worked well together, the friendship that had carried me through the darkest years now strengthened by shared professional success. Olivia's role in the company grew naturally as well. What started as friendship during my recovery had deepened over time into something more meaningful. We took things slowly, never rushing, allowing the relationship to develop naturally after everything I had been through. One quiet spring evening by the lake in Madison, I asked Olivia to marry me. She said yes with tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the long journey we had shared. The wedding was small and intimate, only close family and a few trusted friends. My parents walked me down the aisle with pride. Tyler stood as my best man. There were no grand gestures, just genuine happiness surrounded by the people who had truly stood by me. Marriage to Olivia brought a kind of peace I hadn't known before. We built a home together in a quiet neighborhood not far from my parents. Weekends were spent hiking along the lake, shore trails, hosting small gatherings, or simply enjoying each other's company. The contrast with my previous marriage was striking. This time there was trust, respect, and mutual support without hidden agendas or conditional love. The company continued to thrive. We reached new milestones, expanded the team, and began exploring opportunities beyond Wisconsin. Success no longer felt like a fragile thing I had to protect. It felt like the natural result of years of hard work and the right people standing beside me. Looking back at the entire journey, one truth stood out clearly. Family is not defined by blood alone. When the people who share your last name choose to believe lies and turn against you without giving you a chance to speak, they forfeit the right to call themselves family. Real family shows up when you are broken. They stay through the darkest years. They celebrate your growth without expecting anything in return. I learned that protecting your peace sometimes means cutting ties completely. Forgiveness is not always required, especially when the apology comes only after you have succeeded. Some betrayals run too deep to be repaired, and forcing reconciliation only invites more pain. Today I wake up grateful for the life I have built with Olivia, supported by my parents and Tyler. The betrayal that once destroyed me became the catalyst that forced me to rebuild stronger. The Thompson family chose their golden child in their pride. I chose truth healing in the people who never abandoned me. Some chapters end not with forgiveness, but with quiet acceptance and forward movement. And sometimes walking away completely is the healthiest decision you can make. This is my story. From being falsely accused and discarded by the people I trusted most to building a new life surrounded by those who truly value me. If you've ever been betrayed by family or someone you loved, remember this: you are not obligated to keep toxic people in your life just because they share your blood. Your peace, your healing, and your future are worth protecting.